So one thing that's obviously the rage at the moment with mushrooms is what you said, psychedelic mushrooms. And again, I think have you read How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan?
I haven't read it. Like, I've been following Michael Pollan's stuff for so many years. I feel like I got the gist of it listening to some of his podcasts.
Yeah. You would have got the gist of it. Yeah. You would have got the gist of it. But it was basically the full narrative of the story that he tells on a 2-hour podcast, which you would have heard. And that was a good example of the psychedelics, where it was okay, cool. We know that the studies have shown that this has been really beneficial for, again, like prefrontal cortex, default mode network, switching off that part of your brain and really nullifying it, and that shows really long-term benefits. But it was always being sold by, well, for lack of a better term, the hippie community. Or that was more, the people that were driving the narrative, So, and that's why I think with Michael Pollan and with psychedelics, it was really good because Michael Pollan came out and he said, I've never taken psychedelics in my life. I'm a 55-year-old, or however old he is, 55-year-old researcher, or whatever he would, deem himself officially. And I'm going to go and I'm going to do this anecdotally, and I'm going to do all the tests on myself. I'm going to tell it through my eyes what I found, which I think we need more of that. We need people that play, devil's advocate, but can do it through the eyes of science and see for themselves, and sell it back to the people that want that side of it as well. Does that make sense?
It does, because there's different intentions. That's the thing. People have different intentions.
Yeah.
Some people are in like a biohacking space and want to optimize themselves. And other people say just thinking about, being able to make sure that they can get through their day and do the kid run and, and so there's all these different spaces and places to meet people. I agree. Michael Pollan's such a rad dude. I was just thinking about is, because ambiguity, and people say within like the hippie space who are talking energetics and talking ancient systems.
I bet you hate that word, by the way, too, because it was
the hippie one.
Yeah.
I don't mind it. I mean,
I think, okay, that's cool. That's cool. It's one of those terms that's like, for lack of a better term, that I'm talking about the scientific community, or like the people that are hard to sell. That's probably how they would view it. That's what I meant.
I mean, and at the same time, like hippies, people throw around that word hippie, and you're like, dude, if you want to see a proper hippie,
come up to my neck of the woods.
You're like, for me as well, I'm like, I am such a normie.
You're the straightest bloke in Byron.
Billy, I'm a pretty practical person. What kind of came up? I was listening to Seth Godin.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was listening to Seth.
One of my mates works for him, actually. He runs his Alt MBA. He's the head coach at Alt MBA.
Sweet.
He works a block away.
Really?
Pete Shepherd. I'll flick you one of his podcasts he did with... he did a podcast with... what's it called? The Daily Show. It's some other Melbourne podcasters. I'll flick it to you after the show.
The Daily Show. Who are they? Are they the two guys?
Yeah, Josh and... I've only listened to a couple of them.
Yeah, I was on there.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know those guys then?
Yeah, I think it came up with Jack Post was on there.
Yeah, cool.
He was taking our Lions mate at the time, and then that's how it got connected.
Yeah, I like those guys. I've only listened to a few of their shows, and one of them was my mate Pete the other day. I'll send you the link because it was a really good show. I actually he said a couple of things that I actually wrote in my notes, which is pretty rare for me. Like, I was like, fuck. But he is the head coach for Seth Godin Alt MBA. He's a cool dude.
Anyone in that kind of circle, that kind of, I guess it kind of goes to show, like Tani, like my fiance, she's GM of Superfeast. That's the only kind of business thing we listen to anymore, really. Besides getting specialists in to kind of come and work on the business with us.
Which is the only thing you listen to?
Is Seth Godin's podcast.
Yeah, right.
And something that, pretty much not every episode, but there's something I'm going to sit down and I'm going to really muse on. I'm going to chat about it later, which I'm the same, similar in terms. I'm like, I just don't do that with anything anymore.
I'll tell you what Pete said. He said, because I messaged him about it after. I can't remember the exact quote. I did get it off him, but it was basically, he borrowed the quote. It was from a business consultant from New York City who's he advises the CEO of Macy's and Air America, American Airlines and stuff like that. So anyway, the quote was, and it was right around just before New Year's Eve that I heard it. And I'm not into New Year's resolutions. I think you should just, if you want to do something, just go and do it.
Yeah.
But it was kind of funny that it was right around New Year's, because the quote was, what factors in your life do you not enjoy that you're fully complicit in? So okay, cool. You think that you've got some issues and things that you're not happy with.
Yeah.
like you have power to change pretty much all of it.
Everything.
So whether it's a small change or a massive change, you know, what elements are you complicit in, or something to that matter. And I actually was like, and Pete elaborated on it. He's a really good speaker, Pete. But I sat there and I was like, whoa, that's a really powerful statement. And I actually wrote stuff down. I actually went and did an exercise. I was like, here's some stuff that I think I could change, that I think would be make me better off, you know. And then I wrote some actions and some whatever. But it was sick. So
it's practical.
Yeah, it's
super practical.
It is really good.
That was something like with Seth. He was just saying, in terms of the work that you do, he's like, you just got to show your work.
Yeah.
You can't and this is where I think, this is what I like in terms of, it's kind of given me a little bit more in a potential, because I probably came into the business in a pretty trippy space personally, you know, like I can be quite off with the fairies, and, you know, I've got like a little bit of Peter Pan syndrome, and I really was attracted to that, you know, that magical element of tonic herbalism. But at the same time, there needs to be an approach, and there was an approach then, and a groundedness, so you don't get into like there's a psychological pattern, you know, known like as magical thinking, you know, whereas just like you're just divorced from reality, you know? and so I needed to consolidate that.
You've lost it.
Well, and kind of a little bit,
for sure.
And that can occur, say, both on that kind of the intellect side of the fence, and those kind of like, you know, living more in like the, you know, the spirit realm. However, you know, like I've definitely reconciled that, and maybe I didn't like fly too close to the sun or anything. It was still very been very celebrated. However, I came in a very, you know, last few years have been very consolidating for me, and I want to make sure that I'm, you know, I was like really, I committed myself to like, you know, this business and where I was at for now, not being more of a creative. I'd always want to create 10 things before I'd actually finish where I was at. So I've grounded myself in this work, and just realized there, you know, where there were areas where ambiguity was creeping in, which I'm very sympathetic if you're on the side of the fence where you do want the science. Where did this come from? Where did this kind of claim? And, you know, this is why I always tell people I'm going to be the first to take medicinal mushrooms and tonic herbs off the pedestal, right? Because at the same time, someone who's just flying off and making scientific claims in terms of medicinal mushrooms, well, show me the subjects in that study. What were all of their lifestyle factors? And what Seth Godin's point is show your work. All of your work. Show everything that you've gone through, and everywhere you're, you know, what ancient texts are you talking about? What did the ancient texts actually talk about? What context are they talking about that in? So on and so forth. I feel like that's for me, it really struck me. I listened to that podcast the other day, and it's like, there's something really calming in going forth. And if I'm going to be talking about Jing Qi Shen and all these kinds of things, first of all, to make sure that it's not coming across as, you know, I'm going to market this and convince you, you know, with this kind of like, you know, this ancient word and this character, you know, in order to like buy Jing herbs because they're good for energy. You know, I want to make sure that there's a connectedness where someone isn't being convinced, but they can somewhat be assured via the trust maybe that they have in the company that I'm going to try something, but they're doing that with very realistic expectations, and they're doing it within the context of their actual lifestyle, not any external reason.
They're making their own decision.
But because you've showed your work. That floored me, that concept.
Yeah. I'll tell you what's really good about that is, and I'm not sure if this is something that goes under the umbrella of showing your work in your mind, but there's a guy named William McCaskill, and he's the head of the Center for Effective Altruism. He talks about altruism. He's the youngest tenured professor in the world. He's like 30 years old, and he's a professor at Cambridge. And basically, his company, he has what's his company called? His company is the worldwide leader in putting your money to the most good. So if you want to donate to a charity around the world, here's the top 10 charities that they have found, and it's on how far does your dollar go, and what's the impact of that dollar on that cause on a global scale. What are the biggest issues that we have? So that's basically, and there's like a formula, and they're really reputable, so on and so forth. And they actually have a section on their website which is like updates from their history, and it goes back like 10 years. But they also have every mistake that they've made. Like, we thought that this was going to have this effect, or we found this study which we followed, and that actually got proven to be, proven to be wrong, or it was a bit of an oversight here. And they show, so they don't only show they're working out, they show it warts and all, and which is incredible, I think, because you can just, that gives, I mean, if we're talking business terms, and we probably both have heard the term, you want someone to know, like, and trust you, in business. That's obviously a sales funnel, is know, like, and trust. You can talk about it like that. But you can get even more of a buy-in and trust if you show, hey, we fucked up here. We fucked up here, or this is the path that we went down. We kind of made a bit of a U-turn and we ended up here where we are. Here's the information, take it or leave it. I think that's a really good way of having people trust you.
Well, and trust is, I think that's like over the last 10 years, it's been people in business going like, trust is the currency, and you can't fake that. And if you think you'll get away with it for a couple of years, but eventually it's going to collapse down and people can sniff you out. That's kind of that whole conversation is where I got to in terms of, like, if I'm talking about Taoist tonic herbalism, I want to show my work. If I'm not trying to create points for convincing or selling, where do I land? I land in what attracted me to begin with, is in a system that's been used for a long time. And so I was like, well, I can't reinvent the wheel, because this is like, this has already existed. I can't replicate what I felt by, just trying to mash, like, what I see all the best versions of the West and best versions of the East. I first need to completely understand the system in which it was coming from. Now, this leads what I do talk about with tonic herbalism, and I don't use this as like these herbs don't work for you, it's your problem or fault. I don't like that attitude, and I don't try and bypass like that. However, I've been doing Superfeast for like 9 years now, and so I've watched some things. So I'm talking about within tonic herbalism and within the Superfeast kind of like, range of blends and individual herbs, just like their extract powders. I've noticed some things. These are the general flows. Yeah. For me, I've got to the point where I've realized how effective they are, whether it's medicinal mushrooms at helping bring, a bit more connection to the organ systems, right? And bringing a little bit of immunological momentum, right? I know it's effective, and I've seen it be very effective, and I've seen it do things which are phenomenal. It's like our feedback channel. It's not like a hit it out of the park every time, but at the same time, we can have a feedback channel. When you read some of these things, it can bring a tear to your eye in terms of what they've been able to do. But for me to put them out there into the world, they don't have context. So it also might be Jing herbs, people who are absolutely depleted. An aspect of the system is we're going to start by building up your Jing, and so there's other lifestyle factors we've talked about, but Jing herbs, those that are contributing to the replenishing that kidney essence, so that you've got the foundation, so you're no longer exhausted. I see they work in the right context. And for thousands of years they've been used in this manner by people with a broad health intention in Taoism, and just grandmas and parents and students, just including herbs in their lifestyle in general, because they want to maintain a strong vibrancy, lots of qi, So in that instance, they're proven in terms of a system. However, what I call it like activating the placebo. What good is it? How many systems work? Ayurveda works. Shamanism works. Does it mean you have to do them all? No. What there needs to be is enough information of a system laid out, and that's why I constantly do events. That's why I'm going and doing a free event tonight. I like to give context to people. I talk so much about philosophy. Now they can look at it and go, all right, I'm willing to dance with this system. Yeah. Next step is activating the placebo. So at that point, it's just really like that. It's like, all right, just be so what we ask of you is be consistent for like 30 days. Most likely you're going to hit it by then, to 100 days. And then if you can do that in appropriate doses so you can feel it, chat with us, chat to you. Where do people normally start? Well, if you're exhausted, most people are burning at both ends. You start with, it's like a formula we have called Jing. And if you're going to add another one, maybe like Mason's mushrooms, which is the medicinal mushroom mix. That way, we're building up the wax, the Jing, and we're also making sure that we're getting in there immunologically and helping the body be protected. So they're they're starting points. And then there's other, lots of other wonderful ways that you can go in depending on who you are and what you want to achieve. But be consistent with that. Once it clicks in and you go, these fucking work, man, all of a sudden, the convincing and all that isn't necessary anymore.
Yeah.
What it is then you just need to learn, which is kind of almost, it's a big job. You need to learn how to navigate that world of tonic herbalism and see how it matches with your personal culture.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting because I feel like with anything, I'm not talking about tonic herbalism, I'm talking about regular Western pharmaceuticals and so on and so forth. If you're pushing against it in belief-wise, this isn't going to work for you, then you've got a fucking huge chance that it's not going to. And if you're like, oh my God, if it's the pills from the pharmacy, really, if you walk in and you go, this is going to fix me right away and I'm so excited for it, you've got a huge chance of it really fixing you in comparison if you walk in and go, oh, you know what, I'm in trouble here. This is no matter what I do, I'm up shit creek, So, and because placebo is a real thing, whether we like it or not, nocebo, the opposite of placebo, this is not going to work. I feel bad. This room makes me sick. All the studies, time after time after time, placebo works. We don't really know why, but I think it's, I could see that that'd just be so powerful, really.
Well, then when you have effectiveness mixed with your faith, and I use basically, and
placebo is faith.
Where am I going to put my faith in what works and what's proven and what I've felt in my own body?
What I believe will work.
Yeah. I'm with you. And again, placebo's hectic. It was just like I listened to a Seth Godin on the way here. He was talking about a drug that was on the market for 10 years. And then finally, it was in the Show You Work. And he was like, eventually, someone went actually looked at the data on this thing that got really pushed through the FDA really quickly. And then it was like, hang on, this thing it wasn't proven to be more effective than a placebo.